Last time we looked at 26 EDO, and today we're going to look at a different tuning, which is 22 EDO. So this is a 22 EDO Oni Essi. Oni is Daniel Memory's brand. Daniel's a luthier up in Queensland in Australia, and he makes absolutely incredible guitars, as you can see. And Essi is the model name. So, of course, this is a modification of the standard Essi. There are a few modifications that we made, most notably the 22 notes per octave. The second modification is the scale length. So this is actually a baritone guitar. So the scale length for the top string, which I've actually tuned to C sharp, is approximately 27 inches long. And the scale length for the bottom string, which I've actually tuned to a G quarter sharp, is approximately 29 inches long. Now, my main reason for tuning it this way, so it's basically tuned up in perfect fourths, as you can see here, is because I wanted to use certain string gauges, right? And I just find that the tension is right tuning it this way. So the third modification is, as you can see, the brass plate, which makes the second octave fretless. So our first octave is here. And then we have a little bit more than a second octave, which is fretless. So the idea here is that the brass plate should basically be perfectly in line with the frets. Because when you're playing fretless, you don't want to have a really high action. So this allows us to play with a fairly low action. And that makes the transitions between fretted and fretless really smooth, like this. And that's without distortion. With distortion, sometimes you can barely even tell that there's a difference if you've got your eyes closed, obviously. So let's delve into 22 EDO. 22 EDO is known as a super Pyth temperament. Now, we saw that 26 EDO had a flat perfect fifth, which made it a mean tone and more specifically a flat tone temperament. Well, 22 EDO's perfect fifth is actually sharp. It's about 7 cents sharp. So it's slightly more in tune than 26 EDO's perfect fifth, like we saw last time. But the fact that it's sharp means that if we form a 7-note scale by stacking perfect fifths, which is going to give us a Lydian scale, right? Like this. That's actually going to give us our major scale, our C major scale, right? Now, as opposed to our standard major scale in 12 EDO, this isn't going to give us 5-4 ratios, right? Or say in like a mean tone temperament, where we're going to get much closer 5-4 ratios. In this case, we're going to get 9 to 7 major thirds and 7 to 6 minor thirds, like this. So, if I build triads on each scale degree, this is what we're going to get. So as you can hear, just like in our standard major scale in 12 EDO, we still have 3 major triads, 3 minor triads, and a diminished triad. So in many ways, we can still have similar functionality, but with those different thirds, right? And one cool thing about 22 EDO is that even though our 7th harmonic is still about 13 cents sharp, so it's not perfectly in tune with the harmonic series, I still think it has a really nice sort of sweet sound to it, and it's very usable within scales. Unlike, say, for example, in 26 EDO, where it's perfectly in tune, but sometimes it can be more difficult to integrate into scales. And you often have to build rank 3 scales in order to really get the most out of the 7th harmonic. So the minor 7ths sound like this. And of course, with the minor third, that can sound really nice. So these are our keys in 22 EDO. And one of the cool things about 22 EDO is that as opposed to, say, 24 EDO, which is our standard quarter tones, right? Where we get 2 different cycles of fifths. So one of them is our standard 12 EDO cycle, and then the other one is another 12 EDO cycle, but offset by 50 cents. Whereas something that's cool about 22 EDO is that we can go all the way through 22 cycles of fifths until we end up back at our original key, right? So if we started at C major, or if we just started on a C and we built fifths all the way through the cycle, we wouldn't end up back at C until we've gone through all of the other keys, which is quite cool. And as opposed to standard tuning, it can be a bit strange in 22 EDO when you look at the key signatures, because often you need to combine two different types of accidentals, right? So as we've seen in SuperPyth, we get that 9:7 harmonic ratio for the major third, which in some contexts can also be 14:11, although it's nowhere near as accurate, that particular ratio in 22 EDO. And for our minor third, we have our 7:6 ratio, right? But the cool thing about 22 EDO is that we've still got our standard 5/4 major third and 6/5 minor third. And although we can't build a scale that incorporates these using perfect fifths, we can sort of use a workaround to build a major scale that's a little bit closer to our standard major scale in 12 EDO and allows us to utilize those triads. So it goes like this. So as you can see, we've actually got 8 notes in this scale. So what I've done is I've added in a second degree. And the reason that I need to do this is that if I want to form triads on each degree, right, that have the correct fifth, correct as in based on our standard major scale, right? Because technically there is no correct or incorrect. But if we want, for example, our 2 chord to have a perfect fifth, as opposed to a diminished fifth, we need that lower second degree, like this. If we use the raised second degree, we're going to get this. Which also sounds really cool and can certainly be used in other contexts as well. So if I build all of my triads using this scale, this is what I'm going to get. Now here, as you can see, I've used that raised second degree, right? Because we don't want our dominant chord being like this. It's going to sound a little bit wonky, isn't it? Then for our 6th degree. So as opposed to the 7-note SuperPyth scale that we just looked at, which is actually a rank 2 temperament, meaning that there are 2 generator steps, one of 4. So that's our major second, and it's 4 steps between each note. And then our minor second, which is 1 step. This other major scale that we've just looked at is actually technically a rank 4 scale, although I sort of think of it more like a rank 3 scale with an alteration on the 2. But technically it is really a rank 4 scale because we have 4 generator steps, right? So we have a generator step of 3 like this. Generator step of 1. Another one of 3. One of 2. One of 4. One of 3. Of 4 again. And then of 2 again. Now, this can definitely complicate things and it definitely makes it more difficult to sort of keep track of things within the scale. But the fact that this allows us to build those triads and gives us a sort of duality in 22 EDO between the modes based on this more standard major scale and the modes based on that SuperPyth major scale that we looked at. So as we've seen, we've got some really beautiful intervals that we can play with in 22 EDO, right? And we've got quite a lot of melodic as well as harmonic flexibility. So let's see what chords we can build using some of these more concordant intervals. So let's start by looking at that 9-7 major third that we got from the SuperPyth scale. So this can sound really beautiful in the context of a 4-7-9 chord like this. And as I just mentioned, in some contexts this can actually become a 14-11 harmonic ratio. So if I move that up a step, right, that interval, and if I invert it like this, you can see that we get a different root note. So now our root note is this. So let's see what other chords we can get by building on this same fundamental. Then we can actually also incorporate the 15th harmonic. It is a little bit difficult for me to get the ideal voicing to make this really concordant, but I still really like this chord. So if you want to see more music that I've made in 22 EDO, you can listen to some of my previous videos, including this one here, Pogo Grit. And you can see in Pogo Grit that I'm using a combination of SuperPyth and this other scale. So you'll notice in the more sparse middle section, I am using more of the standard triads. But there is still some SuperPyth in there as well. It's all sort of intermingled together. So I hope to see you around next time. I'm going to be doing a whole series of these videos. There's way too much information to put into one video, just like there's too much information to put into one video on 12 EDO. There's already probably thousands, hundreds of thousands, or if not millions of videos just on 12 EDO. So there's a lot of material to go through. I didn't want to put it into one video. But yeah, this is sort of an introduction. So yeah, if you enjoyed this material, click the like button, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. See you later.